All right. Well, hello, and thank you, Lennox, for that really generous introduction. Wow, that was terrific. I feel really empowered. It's really an honor to be here and to give this talk, which is titled "The Power of Transformational Engagement." And this morning I was at my hairstylist person. She's a friend, and her name is Jeannie. And I said, Jeannie, you have to make me look really professional because I'm speaking in front of real estate brokers. And she said, oh, I have so many of my clients are real estate brokers. They are so put together. They are so sharp and professional. She's like, gosh, if I were you, I'd be so scared to get up and talk in front of them. And I'm like, that's not helping me. But she said, well, think about them as your students. So I'm like, okay. So I invite you all to just learn with me. I'll be along for the ride. We'll be in this together. First of all, I do want to congratulate you all on your success. I know some of you have been here year over year many times. And for some of you, it may be your first time. So whether you've been here many times or it's your first, I really want to congratulate you. And I hope you just soak in this moment and you're present. And you really acknowledge the hard work that you've done to be here and all the people who have helped you get to this point. So I see this moment being at this top producer celebration as sort of a peak defining moment in your career. Psychologists call these kinds of defining moments peak experiences, and they really do shape our sense of self and our working identity. But there's another type of experience that has an impact on us. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. And these are the smaller micro moments that happen on an everyday level that feel a little bit mundane, but actually cumulatively over time have a really positive impact on our well-being and our success. So I'm going to have you think about a time, maybe recently, where you had a positive, memorable experience, encounter with somebody. It might have been a conversation with a friend, a coworker, maybe a family member. So just grab that memory in your mind if you would. Okay, so you'll have somebody in mind or an encounter in mind. Who were you speaking to? What was going on? What kinds of questions were you asking, or what kinds of questions were asked of you to make that experience memorable? So if you're remembering something that was positive, you're likely feeling a little more reflective right now, maybe some gratitude. You're feeling some elevation of spirit. This is really the power of positive emotion, and that's what I'm going to be moving into. And I want to just give this caveat at the outset. When I say positive emotion, I'm not just talking about happiness or optimism, because positive emotion can also include gratitude, seeing somebody and accompanying them in their pain or challenging moment in life, right? Positivity, again, it's a range of emotions, but really the effect of it is elevation. So micro moments, these small, everyday, kind of seemingly fleeting moments, can positively shape our well-being and our work success. So I'm drawing, this is not from my own research, but I'm drawing from the research of Barbara Fredrickson. She's a professor of psychology at UNC Chapel Hill. But she calls these micro moments positivity resonance. Again, they're frequent, small, and seemingly fleeting. And yet, research, the psychological and the neuroscience research, is showing that they affect our sense of connection to others and our own well-being. So I am going to describe what these moments are, what they look and sound like, and what they also feel like, and also try to give you some suggestions on how you might cultivate more of this positive resonance in your own working lives. Let me pause here and I just want to kind of take stock of the moment that we're in. Lennox did a really beautiful job, so did John, of sort of punctuating what's going on right now. And I know there are a lot of challenges. So I want to just briefly talk about two sets of challenges. First, in real estate, And as you all have experienced in your careers, this profession is very demanding. Emotionally, cognitively, physically, there's so much being asked of you, and you are trying to be probably all things to all people. And you might be feeling overworked. Some of you might be heading towards burnout, or you've experienced it. It can take a toll. There's some research that comes out of Baylor University that was done a few years ago, and these researchers asked real estate brokers like yourselves, what are the biggest challenges that you're facing, and how do you cope with these challenges? So the researchers found, well, there are two big stressors. One, you've already heard about. Those are the industry stressors. What's going on with the real estate cycle, market regulations that you're having to adapt to. And then the second set of stressors would be everything that happens within the transaction. A lot of project management that you're doing for every single transaction, right? And some of you are doing that on your own, and some of you are doing that within teams. You're working with clients who have challenges, and some of them probably are more challenging than others, like, right? Not everybody is going to be your cup of tea, and some are going to be a lot more demanding than others. You're also showing a lot of properties, and you're negotiating and closing on deals. So those are the stressors that have kind of bubbled to the top in terms of the research. Now, parallel with what's going on in the industry, there's something going on in our broader society and culture. That is this pervasive experience of social disconnection and loneliness. And people in the U.S. are reporting higher levels of loneliness than ever before. We're seeing this also trending globally. The U.S. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy actually earlier this year said we have to battle this epidemic of loneliness because there are harmful effects for our health. The lonelier we feel, the greater the risk of heart disease, stroke, depression. Now, the causes of loneliness are probably multifactorial and multidimensional, right? We've got to kind of think about what's going on in the economy. We've all been through COVID and still sort of experiencing the difficulties of that. Jobs are sometimes precarious. Migration patterns in terms of where people are moving to for opportunities to work means that they're living further away from members of the nuclear and extended families. So we are physically more separate from our families, which used to be sort of our ecosystems of support. So that's also playing into this loneliness pandemic. So given the industry and sort of cultural shifts, we are all navigating a VUCA world. So it feels volatile, feels uncertain, unpredictable, complex, and ambiguous. But there are some positive things that we can do. So I'm going to go back to the research on the real estate brokers. The researchers also asked not only what are your challenges, but how do you deal with the challenges? How do you cope? How do you navigate? And two strategies actually emerged as being pretty effective. The first one has to do with boosting self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is really this idea that you can do something, or if you don't know how to do something yet, you can figure it out. You can learn how to do it. And that's probably a resource that you really are drawing quite a bit from in this career that you have. So boosting self-efficacy and then also boosting self-compassion. I think most of us are pretty good at extending understanding, empathy, and grace to others. But are we doing that for ourselves? Are we giving ourselves that kind of compassion? One of the sort of cases that came up in the research, there was a story of this particular broker who was trying to do it all and was very productive and was trying to be all things to all people. And he was so overworked and burned out that he's like, I've got to figure something else out. And so what he began to do for himself was to manage his priorities, choose which clients he really wanted to work with and which ones he could really service well. he was in the habit of taking everybody. And that sounds like a great thing, right? Like, well, we're getting a lot of business, right? But some of you have probably been to that point where you have to prioritize. And that's what he did for himself, and it made a huge impact on his well-being. Let me just share a more of a personal story. I have 3 boys. My youngest is a first year in college, and he's trying to get into a major. The major is industrial design. So he had to take this foundational class, and he had to get a 3.8 in the class in order to get into the major. It would be an automatic entry. He got a 3.7, so he missed it by just a little bit. And he was really, really down about that. And I asked him, what kind of feedback did you get from your instructor about the project that you turned in? And he told me, and it was actually really constructive feedback. And I said, oh, okay, well, what does that mean to you? And what do you want to do with it? And he was able to take that feedback forward to how he would make the project better the next time. And that's what's happening when we're using, I think the strategy of self-compassion is take a moment to reflect on what happened, not to beat yourself up, but to learn from what happened so you can apply that going forward. And that does boost self-efficacy, right? Because for my son, he's like, okay, I can learn from that feedback and I can apply it going forward. So there's another example. Now, I've talked about what real estate broker sort of strategies have been. They help you to be stronger on the inside and to be well. And that is a foundation for having strong interpersonal relationships. So I'm going to talk now about positivity resonance, which Barbara Fredrickson calls the building block of connection. Positivity resonance, these micromoments, are characterized by shared positive emotions, mutual care and concern. So you're invested in the other person's well-being and success, as well as physiobiological and behavioral synchrony. So in these moments of positivity resonance, what happens is that people actually come closer together. So heart rates come closer together. You can see the physicality of sort of there's a synchronicity, right? You see people leaning in, moving towards each other. And there is this sharing of emotion that elevates the parties. So these moments, research shows, can happen between romantic partners, family members, coworkers, and even strangers. So they can certainly happen, and I know many of you have experienced this, in your client relationships. These moments cultivate an embodied rapport, social connection, and trust. And trust facilitates that relationship building. So what does positivity resonance look like and what does it sound like? So let me give some examples. You can see that it's happening between people when there's a shared gaze, like you're making eye contact. I'm making eye contact with you right now. That eye contact is happening in this moment. There's a mirroring of emotions. So if one person in the conversation has a lot of excitement, the other person is probably going to try to match that energy. If one person is feeling a little bit down, the other person is going to match that energy. That's what we mean by the mirroring of emotions. And this also happens with body language. So there are all these nonverbal cues that we can see. There is the nodding of the head. What does that say? Oh, I'm affirming. I hear what you're saying. I'm tracking with you. And there's a leaning in. You might turn your body a little bit. So you're creating this sort of circle of trust with the other person. And your goal is not to get something that you want, but it's rather to learn about that person or to learn from that person. Now, in many of our conversations that are a little bit more transactional, we are getting something out of that conversation. What I'm suggesting is that that's not the primary goal. The primary goal in positivity resonance is that we want to learn from the other person. We're really curious about them. We're going to be present in both body and mind. We're actively listening rather than thinking about, oh, what's the next thing that I should say? I want to sound really smart and prepare my response. You kind of put that aside because you're actively listening to what the person is saying. And hospitality is given and experienced. Have you ever been in that kind of an encounter where you feel that the other person has really welcomed you and invited you conversationally? It's an amazing feeling. Hospitality is what it actually means. It's not just being nice to people, it's not just welcoming, but it actually refers to welcoming the stranger and bringing them into the fold and being a neighbor to them. That's really what hospitality is. Let me talk a little bit about what are people feeling in these positivity moments. Well, the research shows that people feel a sense of uplift, an elevation, sometimes even a weight coming off the shoulders. They also feel a sense of appreciation, a sense of being understood, seen, heard, valued, validated, and a sense of being cared for. Those are really powerful emotions. David Brooks, who is a New York Times opinions columnist and author of the recent book, How to Know a Person, The Art of Seeing Others Deeply and Being Deeply Seen. Has anyone read that book? I recommend that book very strongly. Okay, so David Brooks says there are generally two types of people in the world. There are illuminators and there are diminishers. Diminishers tend to be very transactional, not very present in the moment. They talk more than they listen. And why is that? It's because diminishers are focused on themselves. On the other hand, illuminators offer their attention. They offer their gaze. David Brooks talks a lot about that gaze that happens between two people. Martin Buber, who is a Jewish theologian, calls it the I-thou relationship. So illuminators give their gaze and attention to others. They show up in the present moment. They are present with the other person. They are loud listeners, and they ask curious questions. So this is good for social connection and for community. And it's also good for your business, right? And there tends to be an expansion that happens in people in these moments. Openness, humility, and even a willingness to invest in others. We call that prosociality. It's that desire to do good for others and to want others' success. So in our lives, communication with others is the currency of our relationships. Communication and dialogue. Edgar Schein, who is one of my favorite organizational psychologists, says that there are 4 levels of dialogue in our personal and our professional lives. So you can see at the bottom of the arrow, -1. What is that level? Oh, that's the place where we want to dominate and control others. That's obviously not where we want to be. I know I've been there from time to time with my kids, and I've had to repent for that. So that is not where we want to be, but we all do make mistakes. Where we tend to be most of the time in our professional lives is level 1, which is that transactional space, where we keep some professional distance. We're trying to do the best work that we can do. And it is not bad to be in that place. That is where we are a lot of the time. And I know many of you, well, all of you are here because you're transactional excellence. But I know you're also here because you've taken it to level 2, which is that more personal side. There's mutual trust. So level 1 and level 2 are both important. Level 2 is where we want to be more and more. And sometimes we do get to level 3 in our professional spheres. If you imagine maybe a client who's going through a struggle, and you pause and slow down to accompany them in that space without trying to solve their problem, but just to hear them and to say, gosh, I hear you. That must be so hard. That's a level 3. And I know you've experienced that as well. Positivity resonance helps us move from transactional to transformational, from level 1 to level 2, and even to level 3. And it doesn't take more time. It really doesn't. It might feel that way because you have to slow down, but what it does require is our attention. We are living in the attention economy. Have you looked at your phone during this talk? Probably. Our phones are pulling our attention. Sorry, I'm not calling anybody out for if you did that, it is okay. I've done that many times. So that's just a little example, right? There are things that are pulling at our attention. So leaning into this, cultivating these moments of positivity resonance, it's going to take a slowing down our attention as well as intention. We have to have the intention to do this. So how do we cultivate positivity resonance in our conversations? Shine says we need to use humble inquiry. Humble inquiry. 2 really fantastic words, and put them together. So what is inquiry? It's just inquiring about others, right? There's a curiosity there. Humble means that we enter the conversation without an agenda, trying to put our assumptions aside, and also telling ourselves, we know a lot, but we don't know it all. And I'm going to have this conversation with somebody to learn more about that person. If it's with your client, what does your client really want and need? Not just in a house, but in a home. Get really curious about that and lean into it and use some of these sort of behavioral skills that I've mentioned that probably bear repeating. Make eye contact. Ask open-ended questions. Open-ended questions. So if you're asking a question that just results in a yes or no, you haven't asked an open-ended question. Actively listen and ask follow-up questions. As you are cultivating these moments and you get some real just nuggets from people that you're talking to, especially your clients, write them down if you have a little book, a little notebook. Because our memories, we have so much to hold in our brains, can't always rely on our memory. So write it down. Put it in your Engage CRM. Okay, I got that from Howard, so I'm putting that in. Okay, put it in your Engage CRM. All right, Lennox, I hope that makes you happy too. Okay, no, but the point is capture the information so that you can do something with it. Information is only as good as what you do with it, so you can thread that nugget into your next conversation. I'm going to end with a story, and the story is not my own. It actually comes from a book, and the book title is Unreasonable Hospitality, The Remarkable Power of Giving People More Than They Expect. Let me just read that title again because it's awesome. Unreasonable Hospitality, The Remarkable Power of Giving People More Than They Expect. This is written by Will Guidara, who was the former GM and co-owner of 11 Madison Park, a famous New York restaurant that was the #1 restaurant in the world in maybe 2017 or so. And the author tells the story of 2 real estate brokers who give 2 different kinds of gifts. So one broker representing a buyer, and so for the welcome home gift, they leave a bottle of champagne in the refrigerator. That's so nice, right? That is a really nice gesture. What I kind of want to ask you is, nice gesture, but is it personal? Is it personal? Maybe the buyer doesn't drink at all, or maybe they don't even like champagne. Maybe they actually really like bourbon or something else, So a good gesture, right? And probably appreciated. But will that be a story that client tells to somebody else? Probably not. I don't think so. The second broker does something a little bit different, and this broker is representing a seller. The transaction has closed, and the broker remembers that the seller is a parent who has grown kids. But in the house, there's a door jamb that has marks. So they've marked the heights of their kids over the years. And the broker asks the buyer, knowing that the house is going to be renovated, would you mind if I remove that door jamb? So they're like, sure. And the broker presents that door jamb to the seller. And the seller just weeps. Why? That is an example of positivity resonance. The broker remembered something about their client, and the gift didn't cost anything. This is not about how much you spend. It's about the thought you invest, right? And that broker remembered what was important to the seller and gave a phenomenal, memorable, personalized gift. I know this is a hard time for you and for many, many, many clients. I just want to encourage you all to be self-compassionate, practice positivity resonance at home and at work. Move to level 2. Transform your engagements and make it intentional every single day. So you're not just in the real estate transaction business, you're actually in the life transformation business. I'm going to say that one more time. You are not just in the real estate transaction business, you are in the life transformation business. This is people's homes. Hospitality is a dialogue. It is not a monologue. So remember that. Practice the positivity resonance, these micro moments, and you have an opportunity to do that today. And I realize I'm the only thing probably standing between you and that open bar over there. So I'm going to close it here and just thank you for your attention and your time.